The next step to making our form work is to take the input elements that we already have and make them controlled elements. So elements that are entirely controlled by React components. And since we already know how that works, as we have done it so many times already, let's get right to it. So the first one is for the bill itself. So set bill, and we use state with an empty string. And we are using an empty string because these are input text elements. And so this is how it needs to work. Next up, we have one for the expense paid by the user. So let's call this one paid by user. And then set paid by user, use state, again empty, and then also one for the select here. So const who is paying and set who is paying. Use state, and here we start with the default of user, which is one of the values that we have here in our two options, right? Now it would be a bit more elegant to use a true false value here. For example, we could call it is paid by user, and then that could be either true or false. But that's a little bit difficult to implement with the values coming from here. So we can't really pass true or false here. That doesn't really work. And so we just do it like this. Okay, and now once again, we will wire everything up. So I will do it here as fast as I can. And you could even pause the video if you wanted and just do it yourself. So e.target.value. Okay, and now why not just copy and paste this here? So value is now paid by user, and then set paid by user, and the same thing, well, not here, but here. So here it's who is paying, and then set who is paying. All right. So let's write something here. And then we should see it here in our component tree that the state is exactly what we expected. Or actually, we should convert these two here to numbers. So let's select this one and actually also the next one. So we can do everything at the same time. And if I then reload here, then, yeah. Oh, well, only this one has been converted. And, oh, okay. I did a mistake here. So, just to see that it's normal that this happens. So I selected the wrong one there. So let's try that one more time. Because, of course, this is really important that we get numbers here and not strings. And yeah, that's correct. And if I select this one, then it is the friend. But now, what about this one here? So why is there no value here? Well, here we actually don't need a state because we cannot write anything here into this field. Also, this expense of the friend can actually easily be computed from the bill value minus the expense of the user himself. So that sounds like derived state, right? And I'm placing it right here after paid by user, just so they are in the same order as in the UI. So paid by friend is simply the bill value minus what has been paid by user. But actually we should be careful with this because in the beginning the bill is just a string. So this doesn't really work. So let's first ask if there is a bill, well then the result of the operation should be this. And if not, then let's also make it an empty string. And now we just need to go down here and use it. Well, right here. So here we will only specify the value, but not the handler. So paid by friend. And nice, there is our 150. And if we change this, let's say to 150, then of course each time that the state is updated, so each time that we write something new, the state is updated and then the component re-renders. So this function will get executed again, and then this derived state, so this variable here, will be reset as well. So it will take these values here again, calculate its thing, and then store the value in this variable. So then that gets displayed here. But now there's just one problem with this, because let's say we write 1500. So that's not really correct, because then here Clark's expense is negative. So basically we need to ensure that our expense is at most equal to the bill value itself, but never greater than it. So let's come down here and do that right here. So we could actually extract this into its own function, but let's just do it all in line here. So we have the number here, so the paid value basically. Let's copy this because we will need it again. But for now, let's test if this value is greater than the bill. So if it is, then we basically don't want to change the state. So we can just use then the current paid by user again. But otherwise, then we actually want the new state to become, well, what we have written there. So that's e.target.value. Okay, so again, we check in the new value that has been written into the field and we compare it with the bill. And if it's larger than the bill, then we will just basically reset the value here to paid by user, which is already the value that was in there before. But if not, so if it's a valid value, then we just use it here. So this will then become the new state. And so now let's just quickly reload here. Let's say 200. And so now, as I type some other number here, you cannot see it, but I'm typing it, then this value here is not updated. Great. So we converted our form here into a basically controlled form where all the elements are now controlled elements. So what we need to do next is to add the logic of actually splitting the bill and then updating the balance between the two friends. So updating the value that we can see right here. Now that's a bit more work, and so let's actually leave that for the next video. But before we go there, I actually want to quickly show you what happens when we click on one of these other friends. So let's click here, and you see that the state has not been reset, right? So the state that we had here before is exactly the same when we click on other friends. Now with the knowledge we have at this point, we are not yet ready to fix this and also not really ready to understand it. All I can say for now is that this happens because this component is rendered in exactly the same place in the component tree as before. I mean, when I click here again, then the same component is rendered again in exactly the same position. So the component doesn't disappear in the meantime, and so therefore it is not really re-rendered. And so that means that the state then stays the same. Of course, if I close this and select the same friend again, then since the component has disappeared and then appeared again, then the state is reset. But again, if I do this and select another one, then the component doesn't really completely re-render, at least not the state in it. So the state is not reset in this case. But don't worry about that for now, as we will fix this later once we have a bit more knowledge about some deep fundamental things that happen inside React. All right, so just wanted to show you this, but now let's move on to the next video and actually finish up this project.